The space station floated in the darkness like a metal flower. It was called Station, and it was the biggest military training center in the entire galaxy. Ships came and went every hour. Soldiers from 12 different alien species walked through its silver halls. They came here to learn how to fight together against the enemies that waited in the deep black of space. Commander stood in the main hangar, watching the ships land. And his people were known as the greatest warriors in the Allied fleet. He stood 8 feet tall. His body was covered in dark armor that was not metal but living shell, grown from his own skin. He had 4 eyes, 2 large ones in front and 2 smaller ones on the sides of his head. His mouth was not like a human mouth. It had sharp parts that clicked together when he talked or when he was angry. Today he was angry. Was in charge of the new training program. 12 species had sent their best young soldiers to learn together. They had sent their fastest warriors. They had sent fighters who had already killed enemies in real battle. Even the peaceful had sent students who had finished their growing and were ready to learn war. But the humans were late. Clicked his mouth parts in annoyance. Humans were strange creatures. They were small and soft. They had no armor on their skin. They could not see in the dark. They could not breathe underwater. They could not survive in the cold of space without special suits. By all logic, they should be weak. But they were not weak. This was the problem that made uncomfortable. In the 50 years since humans had joined the galactic community, they had won battles they should have lost. They had solved problems that other species could not solve. They had a strange ability to survive and adapt that made no sense to. He did not like things that made no sense. A ship appeared in the hangar entrance. It was small and simple, painted in the gray colors of Earth's military. Watched it land with his 4 eyes. Finally, he thought. Now he would see what kind of warriors the humans had sent. The ship's door opened. A woman walked out first. She was average height for a human, with black hair pulled back from her face and calm, dark eyes. She wore a simple uniform with no medals or decorations. Her name, had been told, was Park. She was supposed to be their escort. But where were the soldiers? Then saw them, and his mouth parts froze in confusion. Children, small human children walked out of the ship behind the woman, counted 12 of them. The oldest looked like they might be 10 years old by human counting. The youngest was a tiny girl who barely reached the woman's waist. They wore matching uniforms and carried small bags on their backs. Felt his anger rise like fire in his chest. The other commanders had gathered to watch the arrivals. Of the stood nearby, her insect-like body clicking softly. Of the crossed his massive arms over his chest. Prime hummed, his crystal body glowing with confusion. "Is this a joke?" demanded. His voice was loud and sharp. He walked toward the human woman with heavy steps that shook the floor. "We asked for your finest tactical minds. You sent us bobbies." The woman named did not step back. She did not look afraid. She simply looked at with those calm, dark eyes and bowed her head slightly. "Commander," she said. Her voice was soft but clear. "These are students from the Academy on Earth. They have been selected for the Joint Operations Simulation." "Selected?" made a sound of disgust. "Selected for what? To be crushed under my foot? To embarrass your species in front of the entire galaxy?" He looked down at the children. They were so small, so fragile. He pointed at the tiniest one, a girl with short hair and a round face. "This one. What is your name, cub?" The girl looked up at him. Her eyes were dark and steady. "My name is," she said. Said the name like it tasted bad. "Tell me, little, do you know what we do here? Do you know that this is a place where warriors train, where we learn to kill our enemies?" The girl did not cry. She did not look away. "Yes," she said simply. "Turn back to. This is madness. I will not allow it. Send them back to your planet. Bring real soldiers." "With respect, Commander," said. "The Allied Fleet Charter states that each species may send whatever representatives they choose. You do not have the authority to reject them." Felt his rage grow. She was right, and he hated that she was right. The charter was clear. Each species controlled their own selection. Then they will fail, he said. They will fail, and everyone will see that humans are not the clever creatures you pretend to be. You are soft, you are weak, and you send children to do a warrior's job. He leaned down, bringing his face close to his. His 4 eyes stared into her too. I will enjoy watching them break, he whispered. Did not move. They are here to learn, Commander, as are we all. Stood up and turned away. He gestured to one of his officers. Take them to the barracks, give them Section 9. The officer hesitated. Section 9, Commander, but that section has the worst conditions. The gravity is unstable, the heating is broken. I know, said. It is perfect for cubs who should not be here. He walked away without looking back. Behind him, he heard the human children being led away. They walked quietly, not crying, not complaining. This annoyed him somehow. Children should cry when they were afraid. Children should complain when they were treated badly. These children did neither. Of the move to walk beside, her many legs clicked on the metal floor. You are hard on them, she said. Her voice buzzed slightly, the way all voices did. I am honest, replied. What can children do in a war simulation? They will be destroyed in the first exercise. Better they learn this quickly and go home. Perhaps, said, but her eyes, all 6 of them, looked back at the children being led away. She had noticed something that had not noticed. The children were quiet, yes, but they were not scared. They were watching. Every child's eyes moved constantly, looking at the walls, the doors, the alien soldiers walking past. They looked at the weapons on the walls. They looked at the ships in the hangar. They looked at everything with a strange hunger, like they were eating the information with their eyes. The smallest girl looked directly at. Their eyes met for just a moment, and in that moment felt something strange, a cold feeling like a warning. Then the girl looked away, and the moment was gone. Said nothing too. She was not sure what she had seen. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe human children always looked at things that way. But deep in her mind, a small voice whispered that Commander had made a mistake, a very big mistake. In Section 9 of the barracks, the human children put down their bags. The room was cold. The lights flickered. The beds were hard. Looked at her students, her face still calm. You heard the Commander, she said softly. A boy named nodded. He was 8 years old with serious eyes and quick hands. He thinks we are weak. Yes. Good, said he, smiled, and it was not a child's innocent smile. Let him think that. The other children smiled too, 12 small smiles in the flickering light. Outside, the stars burned cold and bright, and somewhere in the station, Commander prepared his exercises, certain that he would crush the human cubs within days. He had no idea what was coming. 3 days passed on station. The training program had begun, and 50 young soldiers from 12 species filled the classrooms and simulation rooms. They were the future of the Allied fleet. They were supposed to learn to work together, to trust each other, to fight as one against the enemies that threatened all their worlds. But Commander had made sure that the human children were treated differently. They received the oldest equipment. Their simulation pods were the ones that broke most often. They were given the last choice at meals, when all the good food was gone. They were scheduled for training at the worst hours, when they should have been sleeping. Wanted them to quit. He wanted them to cry and beg to go home. He wanted to prove to everyone that humans were not special, that their children were just weak little creatures who did not belong among warriors. But the children did not quit. Every morning they woke up in their cold barracks. They ate whatever food was left for them without complaint. They walked to their training sessions with straight backs and quiet faces, and they learned. That was the thing that began to bother. They learned so fast. On the 4th day, he decided to humiliate them publicly. The morning session was a tactical briefing. All 50 recruits sat in the great circular room, looking down at a holographic star map that floated in the center. Today's lesson was fleet positioning, one of the most complex subjects in military education. Stood beside the map, his 4 eyes scanning the room. The cadets sat in the best seats, their armored bodies tall and proud. The recruits clustered together, their insect legs folded beneath them. The warriors sat like mountains of muscle. And in the back, in the worst seats with the broken screens, sat the human children. "Today," announced, "we will test your understanding of defensive fleet arrangements. I will present a scenario, and you will tell me how to position our ships." He touched a control and the hologram changed. It showed a planet surrounded by enemy vessels. Red lights marked attack ships. Blue lights marked friendly forces. The situation looked impossible. "Our colony is under attack," said. "The enemy has 3 times our numbers. We have 20 ships to defend the planet. Where do we place them?" Hands went up around the room. A cadet spoke first, suggesting a standard defensive ring. I offered a variation using their swarm tactics. The answers were good, the answers of well-trained soldiers. But wanted to make a point. "Let us hear from our human guests," he said, his voice dripping with false kindness. "Surely Earth's finest tactical minds have something to offer." He pointed at a small boy in the back row. It was the 8-year-old with the serious eyes. "You, human cub, stand up and show us your wisdom." The room went quiet. Other recruits turned to look. Some of them laughed softly. A human child solving a problem that challenged adult warriors. It was a joke. Stood up. He was so small that he barely rose above the seat in front of him. He walked down the steps to the center of the room, stopping beside the floating hologram. The star map cast blue and red light across his young face. Smiled with cruel satisfaction. "Well, we are waiting. Where would you position the fleet?" Looked at the map for exactly 3 seconds. Then he began to speak. "The standard defensive ring will fail," he said. His voice was calm and clear. "The enemy has numerical advantage and will simply overwhelm any fixed position. The swarm variation is better but still loses 60% of our fleet." He reached into the hologram and began moving ships. His small hands worked quickly, precisely. "Instead, we abandon the orbital defense entirely. We pull back to these 3 points." He placed ships near the planet's moons. "These moons create gravitational shadows. The enemy sensors cannot see clearly here. We hide our main force and leave only 4 ships in visible orbit." Frowned. "You would sacrifice 4 ships as bait." "As bait, yes. The enemy will attack the visible ships first. When they commit their force, they will enter this corridor." Drew a line in the hologram. "Their own momentum will carry them past the 3rd moon at maximum speed. They cannot stop quickly." He moved more ships. "We emerge from the gravitational shadows here and here. Crossfire from 2 angles. Their formation breaks. We destroy their command ships first, then their engines. Without command and without engines, the remaining enemy vessels become targets, not threats." The room was completely silent. Finished arranging the ships and stepped back. "Final result, we lose 4 ships. The enemy loses all ships. The colony survives." He looked up at. His eyes showed no fear, no pride, nothing but calm patience. Felt his mouth parts freeze. The strategy was good, more than good. It was elegant. It used the terrain, the enemy's assumptions, and the basic physics of space combat in ways that most adult officers would not think of. But he could not admit this, not in front of everyone. "Clever," said, forcing his voice to sound bored. "Memorized from a textbook, obviously. Any fool can recite tactics they have read about." He waved his hand dismissively. "Sit down, cub. Real warfare is not like your storybooks." Said nothing. He simply bowed his head slightly and walked back to his seat. The other human children watched him with quiet eyes. None of them seemed angry or upset. They just watched, like they were taking notes inside their minds. In the front row, Commander of the felt her antennae twitch. She had been watching the human children carefully since their arrival. What she saw troubled her. They communicated without speaking. Small glances, tiny gestures, a touch on the shoulder, a tilt of the head. The children seemed to share information in ways that were almost invisible. They moved like a single organism with 12 bodies. And there was a 10-year-old girl who rarely spoke. Since arriving on the station, she had done nothing but sketch in a small notebook. Had assumed the girl was drawing pictures, the way children do. But yesterday had walked past the human barracks and seen the notebook through an open door. Was not drawing pictures. She was drawing ship designs, technical diagrams, engine placements and weapon systems. She was drawing warships. The specifications of vessels were military secrets. They had not been shared with the humans. There was no way a 10-year-old girl should know what the inside of an engine looked like. But had drawn it perfectly. Had said nothing. She was not sure what to do with this information. Part of her wanted to report it too. Part of her wanted to see what would happen next. After the briefing, she approached the human escort. The woman stood alone in the hallway, watching her students file past. "Your children are interesting," said. Turned to face her. "They are students. They are here to learn. They learn very quickly." "Yes." The boy, his tactical analysis was impressive. "He has been studying military strategy for 4 years," said simply, "since he was 4 years old." Santini straightened in surprise. 4 years old, you teach warfare to bobbies." "We teach thinking to children," replied. "What they think about is their choice. Chose warfare, chose engineering, chose small unit tactics." She paused. "Chose communications and electronic systems." Remembered the boy named. He was 9 years old, with quick fingers that never stopped moving. She had seen him looking at the station's computer terminals with hungry eyes. "Why," asked, "why train them so young?" Was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. "Because we are human, Commander. We are small, we are weak. We have no armor, no claws, no venom. For 1,000,000 years our children died. They were eaten by animals. They were killed by weather. They were destroyed by diseases." She looked at her students, walking down the hallway with their small bags and their serious eyes. "So we learned to teach them early. We learned to make their minds strong before their bodies were strong. We learned that a child who can think is harder to kill than an adult who cannot. Consider this. Commander believes your children will fail." "Yes." "What do you believe?" Smiled. It was a small smile, hard to read. "I believe, Commander, that underestimating humans is a mistake many have made. None of them have made it twice." She bowed politely and walked away, following her students. Stood alone in the hallway for a long moment. The cold feeling she had sensed on the first day was back, the feeling of a warning. The first combat simulation was scheduled for tomorrow. Had arranged the teams personally. He had put all 12 human children on the same team, given them the worst ships, and set them against the hardest enemy. He expected them to be crushed. Was no longer sure what to expect. The simulation room was a massive sphere in the heart of station. 50 pods lined the curved walls, each one connected to the central computer that controlled the war games. When a recruit lay down in a pod and closed their eyes, they would wake up in a virtual universe, commanding virtual ships, fighting virtual enemies. The wounds were not real, but the lessons were. Commander stood on the observation platform above the sphere. From here, he could see everything that happened in the simulation. Giant holographic screens showed each team's ships, their positions, their battles. Other commanders stood with him, including of the and of the. Today was the first combat simulation. The recruits were divided into 5 teams. Each team would command a small fleet and try to survive against an AI enemy called the Void Swarm. The Void Swarm was famous in the galaxy. It was a copy of a real enemy that had destroyed entire civilizations. Its tactics were brutal and unpredictable. Had arranged the teams carefully. Team 1 was all the best young warriors of his species. Team 2 was and working together. Team 3 was heavy fighters. Team 4 was a mix of smaller species. Team 5 was the humans. Had given Team 5 the worst possible starting position. Their fleet was old and damaged, one crippled carrier with failing engines and 3 outdated frigates with weak weapons. They started at the edge of the map, far from any resources or cover. The void swarm would hit them first and hardest. He looked down at the human pods. The 12 children lay inside, their eyes closed, their small bodies still, stood nearby, watching her students enter the simulation. She was not allowed in the pods herself. She could only observe. "Begin simulation," commanded. The holographic screens came alive. 5 fleets appeared in the virtual universe, represented by colored dots. Blue for the, green for the, red for the, yellow for the mixed team, and white for the humans. The white dots looked very small, very alone. Then the void swarm appeared. Black dots poured onto the screen like a river of death. Hundreds of enemy ships moving fast, hungry for destruction. They came from all directions at once. There was no single point to defend against. There was only chaos. Team 1 reacted first. They formed their famous battle circle, each ship protecting the others. It was a good tactic proven in many battles, but the void swarm was too many. Black dots crashed against the blue circle again and again. Slowly, the circle shrank. Team 2 fought desperately. They used their swarm tactics, spreading out and attacking from multiple angles. They created crystal shields to protect key ships. They lost less than but they still lost. Team 3 simply charged. Their ships were heavy and powerful. They destroyed many enemy vessels through pure strength, but strength alone was not enough. The void swarm surrounded them and tore them apart. Team 4, the mixed species, tried to coordinate, but they had never fought together before. Their signals crossed. Their tactics conflicted. They fell into confusion and were destroyed one by one. And Team 5, the humans. The white dots were not moving. Leaned forward, a smile growing on his face. "Look," he said to the other commanders. "They are frozen. The cubs are so scared they cannot even move." On the screen, the human carrier sat still in space. The 3 frigates floated beside it. No weapons fired. No engines burned. The void swarm was getting closer. In minutes, the black wave would reach them. "Pathetic," said, "they have already given up." But was watching the screens more carefully. She noticed something strange. The human carrier's energy readings were very high. Power was flowing to unusual systems. The frigates were changing their weapon frequencies in patterns she did not recognize. "I do not think they have given up," she said quietly. Laughed. What else could they be doing, praying to their primitive gods? Their carrier cannot run. Their frigates cannot fight. They are doomed. The void swarm reached weapons range of the human fleet. Black dots began to fire. And then the humans moved. Everything happened at once. The carrier's point defense system came alive, but it was not using normal targeting. It was using patterns like a web. Each shot predicted where the enemy would be, not where they were. Void swarm missiles exploded before they reached the human ships. Enemy fighters died in waves. The controller of the point defense was the smallest child. The one had mocked on the first day. Her hands moved inside the simulation, touching targets that were invisible to others. She could see the patterns in the enemy's attack. She could see where death would come before it arrived, and she stopped it. But defense alone could not win. The void swarm had too many ships. They would eventually break through. The frigates began to move, commanded from the carrier, giving orders in quick, short words. The 3 small ships did not attack directly. They flew in circles around the enemy formation, firing, retreating, firing again. They were like insects biting a larger animal. Each bite was small, but together they were making the enemy angry. The Void Swarm AI did what it was programmed to do. It divided its forces. Some ships chased the frigates. Some ships attacked the carrier. The unified swarm became fragmented. This was exactly what the children wanted. The 9-year-old with the quick fingers was doing something strange in the simulation. He was not commanding ships. He was attacking the enemy's communications. Inside the virtual universe, he found the frequencies the Void Swarm used to coordinate. He began sending false signals. "Turn left," his signal said. "Slow down." The enemy ships obeyed because they could not tell the difference between real orders and fake ones. The formation broke even more. Ships crashed into each other. Squadrons flew the wrong direction. In the observation room, Smile faded. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Why is the enemy malfunctioning?" "It is not malfunctioning," said. Her voice was strange. "The children are hacking its communications." "That is impossible. The simulation is protected against such tactics." "Apparently not protected against human children." On the screen, the battle changed. The Void Swarm was in chaos, but the human fleet was still badly outnumbered. Their carrier was damaged. Their frigates were running out of ammunition. Even with their tricks, they could not win by normal means. Watched from below the observation platform. Her face was calm, but her hands were pressed together tightly. She knew what was coming. She had seen her students plan this together in their cold barracks, drawing diagrams on the floor, calculating numbers with their young minds. She did not stop them. She was only there to help them learn. What they learned was their choice. On the screen, the human carrier began to move. Not backward, not sideways. Forward. The carrier accelerated toward the largest concentration of enemy ships. Its engines burned at full power, pushing the damaged vessel faster and faster. Stared, "What are they doing? That carrier cannot fight at close range. Its weapons are too weak." Understood before he did. "They are not trying to fight," she said. The carrier flew directly into the center of the Void Swarm formation. The enemy ships surrounded it, firing from all sides. The carrier's shields failed. Its hull began to break. Then it exploded. But this was not a normal explosion. The quiet girl who drew ship designs had spent 2 days analyzing the carrier's power systems. She had found a way to overload them in a specific pattern. When the carrier died, it did not simply blow up. It created a wave of energy that spread outward in all directions. The explosion destroyed 11 enemy ships instantly. The energy wave damaged 30 more. The electromagnetic pulse shut down the weapons and engines of everything nearby. And the 3 frigates, which had retreated to exactly the right distance, were untouched. They flew into the chaos like sharks into bleeding water. The remaining Void Swarm ships could not fight back. Their systems were down. Their formation was gone. One by one, the frigates picked them off. The last enemy ship died exactly 12 minutes after the simulation began. Team 5, the human children, had won. In the observation room, there was complete silence. Commanders from 12 species stared at the screens where white dots floated in a field of debris. No human ships lost. The enemy fleet was gone. His mouth parts hung open. He could not speak. He could not even think clearly. What he had just seen was impossible. Children, tiny human children. They had just defeated the Void Swarm simulation faster than any team in the history of Station. Below the platform allowed herself a small smile. Her students would be coming out of their pods soon. They would need food and rest. They had worked very hard. But the lesson had only begun. Night came to Station. The lights in the hallways dimmed to save power. Most recruits slept in their warm barracks, dreaming of the battles they had fought in simulation. But Commander could not sleep. The images of the white dots destroying the Void Swarm played in his mind again and again. He walked through the quiet station, his heavy feet echoing on the metal floor. His 4 eyes stared straight ahead, but he saw nothing of the hallway around him. He only saw that explosion, that perfect, impossible explosion. How had they known? The children had used a carrier as a bomb. They had calculated the exact size of the blast. They had positioned their frigates at exactly the right distance. Every part of the plan had worked together like a machine. Even trained officers could not have done it better. Found himself walking towards Section 9, the human barracks. He did not know why he was going there. Perhaps he wanted to see the children sleeping like normal children, small and helpless. Perhaps he wanted proof that what he had seen was some kind of trick. But when he reached Section 9, the human children were not sleeping. The door was partly open. Yellow light came from inside, stopped and looked through the gap. The 12 children sat in a circle on the cold floor. A hologram floated in the middle of them, showing the battle they had just won. They were not celebrating. They were not laughing or playing like children should. They were working. The smallest girl pointed at the hologram. "My point defense response was slow in the first 30 seconds, she said. "I let 2 missiles through the inner zone. We were lucky they missed the engine section." Nodded seriously. "I should have moved the frigates earlier. The harassment pattern started 15 seconds late. That gave the enemy time to form a partial wall." "The communication hack almost failed," said. "Their encryption changed twice. I had to adapt the signal faster than I expected. Next time I need to prepare more backup frequencies." The quiet artist looked at her notebook. "The explosion radius was 92% of my calculation. I made an error in the energy transfer formula. I need to correct it." Felt his mouth parts go cold. They were criticizing themselves. They had just won a perfect victory, and they were finding their own mistakes. They were studying their own flaws with the same focus that masters used to train for years. These were not children. These were something else. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The 12 faces turned to look at him, 24 dark eyes, calm and steady. None of them seemed surprised. None of them seemed afraid. "What are you?" demanded. His voice came out rougher than he meant it to. Rose from where she had been sitting against the wall. She moved to stand between and her students, but she did not look threatening. She looked like a teacher protecting her class from an interruption. "They are children, Commander," she said. "Human children." "Do not lie to me," pointed at the hologram. "I watched that battle. I have commanded fleets for 30 cycles. I have never seen tactics like that, not from adults, not from trained officers, certainly not from bobbies." "They are not bobbies, they are students." "Students of what? What school teaches children to destroy fleets?" Was quiet for a moment. She looked back at her students who were still sitting in their circle, still watching with their calm eyes. Then she turned back too. "Sit down, Commander," she said. "I will explain." Almost refused. Sitting down would mean treating this woman as an equal, but his confusion was stronger than his pride. He lowered himself to the floor, folding his long legs beneath him. Even sitting, he was taller than standing. "Humans are not like your species," began. "When a child is born, it already has armor. When it hatches, it can already run. When an infant takes its first breath, it is already stronger than most species ever become." She paused, looking at with those steady dark eyes. "When a human child is born, it cannot walk, it cannot talk, it cannot even hold up its own head. For the first year of life, a human baby is completely helpless. For the first 5 years, it needs constant protection. For the first 10 years, its body is weak and fragile." Clicked his mouth parts impatiently. "So you admit you are weak?" "Yes, human bodies are weak, especially when we are young. For millions of years, this killed us. Our children died in huge numbers. Animals ate them. Weather froze them. Sickness destroyed them. We should have gone extinct 1,000 times." Smiled slightly. It was not a happy smile. "But we did not go extinct. Do you know why?" Said nothing. He was listening now, really listening. Because we found a different way to make our children strong. If we could not give them armor, we would give them intelligence. If we could not give them claws, we would give them creativity. If we could not give them strength, we would give them knowledge. She gestured at the 12 children sitting in the circle. Human children learn faster than any other known species. Their brains are not finished growing. They are flexible in ways that adult brains cannot be. They can absorb information, find patterns, create new ideas, and adapt to change at speeds that seem impossible to other species. That is just learning, said. All species learn. Not like this, shook her head. Commander, your cadets trained for years to master the defensive circle formation. It is excellent, it is proven, it works against most enemies. Yes, and learned that formation on the ship coming here. It took him one afternoon. By dinner, he had already found 3 ways to defeat it. By the next morning, he had invented 2 new variations that work better against swarm tactics. Felt cold, that is not possible. It is not possible for adult minds, but is 8 years old. His brain is still forming. It can bend in directions that grown minds cannot. This is true for all of them. She pointed at each child in turn. Can track 200 objects simultaneously and predict their movements. Most adults cannot track more than 40. Can learn a new communication system in hours. Can understand engine designs by looking at the outer shape of a ship. They are not special by human standards. They are simply young. Looked up at. The boy's face was calm, almost gentle, but his eyes held something that made the commander uncomfortable. You fight the way you were taught, said. The same tactics, the same formations, the same ideas. Your training makes you strong, but it also makes you predictable. He stood up, and even though he was tiny compared to, his voice was steady. We do not fight the way we were taught. We fight the way we learn. Every battle is new to us. Every enemy is a puzzle. We do not know what we are supposed to do, so we do whatever works. Stared at the boy. For the first time in many cycles, he felt something strange in his chest, something he had not felt since he was a young warrior facing his first real battle. It was fear. Not fear of being hurt, not fear of death. It was fear of being wrong. Fear that everything he believed about strength and weakness, about adults and children, about humans, and was incorrect. Why did you tell me this? He asked. His voice was quieter now. You could have kept it secret. You could have let us continue to underestimate you. Smiled again. This time the smile was warmer. Because we are supposed to be allies, Commander. We are supposed to fight together against real enemies, and allies should not hide their strengths from each other. She offered him a hand to help him stand. It was a strange gesture, did not touch other species casually, but found himself taking the offered hand and rising to his feet. The final exercise is tomorrow, said. A full war game, all species working together. I know, I designed it. Then you know it will be the hardest test these children have ever faced. They may not win. Looked at the 12 young faces looking back at him, small, fragile, human. But now he saw them differently. He saw the intelligence behind their eyes. He saw the potential in their flexible young minds. He saw what they might become in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years. He saw why the galaxy feared humans, even though they were soft and small. They will surprise us, he said quietly. Nodded, they always do. Left the barracks and walked back through the dark station, but he did not go to his own quarters. Instead, he went to the command center and began changing the final exercise. If the human children wanted a real challenge, he would give them one, not to break them this time. To see what they could really do. The final exercise was the biggest simulation station had ever attempted. All 50 recruits from all 12 species would work together to defend a planet against an invasion. The AI enemy was the Void Swarm again, but this time it was stronger, much stronger. The simulation would last for 6 hours, and every decision would matter. Commander stood on the observation platform with the other commanders. He had not slept at all. He had spent the night redesigning the exercise, making it harder, adding new challenges. But he had also made one important change. The human children would not be pushed to the edges this time. They would be given a real role, a real chance. He wanted to see what would happen. The simulation began at dawn. The 50 recruits entered their pods and closed their eyes. When they opened them again, they were standing on the bridge of a massive space station orbiting a blue and green planet. Below them, 10 million virtual people lived in virtual cities. The recruits were supposed to protect them. The Void Swarm would arrive in 1 hour. Immediately, there was chaos. 50 young soldiers from 12 species tried to work together, but they had never trained as one group. The cadets wanted to lead. The warriors wanted to attack. They wanted to use their swarm tactics. Everyone had different ideas. And the human children said nothing. They sat quietly in the corner of the virtual bridge, watching, listening. Their dark eyes moved from face to face, from screen to screen. They were learning just as they always did. The hour passed quickly. Arguments continued. A loose plan was formed, but it had too many holes. When the Void Swarm arrived, it would tear through their defenses like paper. Then the black dots appeared on the edge of the sensors. The battle began badly. The defensive circle held for a while, but the swarm was too large. The charge was brave but wasteful. The swarms were effective but took heavy losses. Ship after ship went dark on the screens. After 2 hours, half the fleet was gone. The enemy had not even reached the planet yet. After 3 hours, the situation was desperate. The remaining ships were scattered and damaged. The recruits were panicking, shouting at each other, blaming each other. The alliance was falling apart. That was when stood up. The 8-year-old boy walked to the center of the bridge. He was so small that most of the alien recruits did not even notice him at first. But then he spoke, and his voice cut through the chaos like a knife. "Stop!" Everyone turned to look at him. A warrior laughed. "The human baby wants to talk." "Yes," said calmly. "The human baby wants to talk, and you should listen because right now you are all dying." The bridge went quiet, pointed at the tactical display. "You are fighting separately, each species using their own tactics. This is why you are losing. The enemy does not see 12 species. It sees one target. You need to be one army." The cadet leader stepped forward. His name was, and he was the best student in Commander's training program. "And who should lead this one army? You." "No," said. "You should lead the defense. Your circle tactics are the best for holding ground, but you need to change them." "Change how?" "Looked at." The small girl stood up and walked to the tactical display. She touched it with her tiny fingers, and the formation changed. Not a circle, a shell, 3 layers, in the center with the heaviest shields. On the outside, mobile, able to fill gaps. Between them, using their crystal shields to protect the transition points. The display showed the new formation. It was elegant. It was beautiful. It used the strengths of each species to cover the weaknesses of the others. Stared at it. "This could work," he said slowly. "It will work," said, "but only for defense. To win, we need to attack." The boy with the quick fingers stepped forward. "I have been studying the Void Swarm communications for 3 hours. Their central command is here." He pointed at a cluster of ships near the back of the enemy fleet. "If we destroy those ships, the rest will lose coordination." "How do we reach them?" a recruit asked. "The swarm is between us and them." The said, he looked at the mountain-like warriors. "You want to charge, you want to break things, we can use that." He drew a line on the display. A spear. Heavy fighters in a tight formation pushing straight through the swarm toward the command ships, not to destroy everything, just to make a path. "We will take heavy losses," I said. "No, because has a plan." The quiet girl looked up from her notebook. The enemy's weapons have a specific frequency. If we adjust our shields to counter that frequency, we can reduce damage by 40%. I wrote down the settings. She showed her notebook. Pages of calculations filled every inch of paper. They stared at it, then looked at Commander on the observation platform. Gave a small nod. "We will do it," they said. One by one, the pieces came together. Did not command. He suggested. He connected. He took the strengths of each species and wove them into a single plan. His fellow human children helped, each one contributing their special skills. And slowly, incredibly, the alliance began to work. The new defensive formation stopped the Void Swarm's advance. The enemy could not break through the layered shells. Each time they pushed, they would swarm the gap. Each time they concentrated fire, the shields would appear. The spear launched. 12 heavy fighters in a tight arrow, shields adjusted to specifications, pushing through the swarm like a fist through water. They took damage, but they survived. Fed them information constantly. Turn left, enemy concentration ahead, gap opening at 3 degrees. The spear reached the command ships. They did what they did best. They destroyed. Without its central control, the Void Swarm became stupid. It was still dangerous, still deadly, but it was no longer coordinated. The Allied fleet, working together now like they should have from the beginning, picked apart the remaining enemy forces piece by piece. 6 hours after the simulation began, the last Void Swarm ship died. The planet was saved, the people were protected, the Alliance had won. In the virtual reality, 50 recruits stood on the bridge, staring at each other. An and a dozen other species, and 12 small human children. No one spoke for a long moment. Then the cadet who had led the final defense walked over too. He was 7 feet tall. The boy barely reached his waist. Knelt down so they were face to face. "I was wrong about you," he said. Smiled. It was the first real child smile anyone had seen from him. "It is okay. Everyone is wrong about us at first." On the observation platform, Commander watched the recruits celebrate together. Aliens and humans, warriors and children, all mixed together in a way that should have been impossible. He turned to Commander. "I understand now," he said quietly. "Understand what?" "Why humans are dangerous. It is not their weapons, it is not their ships." He looked down at the 12 small figures surrounded by alien soldiers. "It is this. They make others better. They see what each species can do and they find ways to combine it. They are not conquerors, they are catalysts." The closing ceremony happened that evening. All the commanders gathered to give speeches and awards, was expected to speak last. He walked to the front of the great hall. 50 recruits sat before him. His own cadets, proud and strong, warriors from a dozen worlds, and in the back 12 small humans with calm dark eyes. "I mocked the human cubs," said. His voice echoed in the silence. "I believed size was strength. I believed age was wisdom. I believed that what is small must be weak." He paused, his 4 eyes found, standing beside her students. "I was wrong." The words hung in the air. A commander admitting error was almost unheard of. "These children are not what I thought they were. They are not weak. They are not helpless. They are not cubs to be protected and mocked." He looked at and all the others. "They are seeds, and when they grow—" He stopped. He did not need to finish. Everyone in the room understood. Bowed her head. The children bowed with her. Their eyes never looked away from the commander. Later, after the ceremony, found alone in the corridor. "Will you remember this?" he asked. "When you return to Earth, when these children become adults, when they lead your fleets and your armies, will you remember that we underestimated you?" Looked at him with those calm, dark eyes. "We always remember, Commander. It is one of the things we teach our children. Remember who helped you. Remember who hurt you. And remember who thought you were too small to matter." She smiled, and there was something ancient in that smile, something that spoke of 1,000,000 years of survival against impossible odds. "We remember everything." She walked away, following her students toward their ship. They would return to Earth soon. They would go back to their academy. They would continue learning, growing, becoming. Watch them go. The smallest one looked back at him once. Her eyes were dark and calm and full of things he could not understand. Then she turned and disappeared into the ship. Somewhere in the galaxy, enemies of humanity went about their business. They built weapons. They made plans. They believed they were strong. They had no idea what was growing on a small blue planet called Earth. They had no idea what human children could become. But someday soon they would learn. And by then it would be far too late.